Hello, kids. I'm your new stepfather, David. You're listening to Long Walk Talks Lost, and I am joined tonight by your other stepdad,
Robert Bradford,
and your new stepmom,
Cara Hayes.
Don't question this family dynamic. Just go along with it.
We're a throuple.
Yeah, you have 5 parents now who love you very much.
Or not.
And or they might hate you.
Listen.
And, well, we are not talking about Lost tonight. We are talking Lost adjacent. We're going to be discussing 2 80s horror movies starring John Locke himself, Mr. Terry O'Quinn, The Stepfather 1 and The Stepfather 2, Make Room for Daddy. That's the actual subtitle of that movie.
Oh, God, I hate it so much.
As we mentioned on the last podcast, we wanted to keep our themed meal going, so we settled on food that a step-parent would make, and that was Cara's purview. Cara, tell the listeners, don't tell us, we know what we had. Tell the listeners what we had.
So I just wanted to do like a big kind of Sunday dinner kind of thing that, like a step-parent might do because it's cheap and feeds a lot of people. So we did spaghetti and meatballs. And Robert made the garlic bread, and you brought root beer and orange soda.
Went out and found some old-fashioned bottled sodas.
They were so good.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, delicious. Robert, tell us a little bit that you put some stuff here at the top of the notes about the real-life inspiration for The Stepfather.
Yes, so in about 1971, there was a guy named John List, and Cara, I think you know this story as well. He was laid off from his job at like a high-paying executive position. Did not want to tell his family about it, so similar to The Stepfather in this movie, he kept leaving the house dressed for work at his normal time and keeping up his routine. He just wasn't going to work. And then after several, I think it was actually a month or so of this, he just murdered his whole family. He killed his mother, his wife, and their children. He had told the school that the kids were going on like a family trip for a while. He had basically made sure nobody would look in the house for a while. He removed all family photos containing his picture. So because this was the 70s, the cops actually had a real problem because they didn't have a recent photo without any of those in the house. Wrote a letter to his pastor explaining what he had done, and then just disappeared for 17 years. Nobody knew where this guy had been, what had happened to him, until the TV show America's Most Wanted ran a program on it with a age-advanced bust of his face that looked similar enough to the real thing that one of the neighbors in the new life he had made for himself with a wife and just new family who had no idea who this guy was. And so he was arrested. And so this was in an impressive legal trick. He actually tried to argue that his confession, the letter he'd written, was inadmissible because he'd written it to his pastor and therefore it was protected by seal of confession. The court did not really buy that, but it was admittedly a pretty clever try. So, yeah, the idea, this movie came out in 1987, so just after List had been arrested and his crimes had been publicized. And the screenwriter, Donald Westlake, who apparently is just a really prolific mystery writer, he wrote the Parker series of novels, I think. I was looking down his Wikipedia bibliography, and this guy had done a lot of just different genres, different thrillers. But at the time he took this job, he had apparently just gotten married and was having trouble bonding with his stepdaughter, and so just decided to sort of channel that into, hey, what if I actually was a mass murderer with a terrible secret?
Do you think that when they watched this movie together, like, all right, honey, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch the movie your stepdad wrote, that she, when it was over, looked up at him and she was like, you know what, Dad? I've always appreciated you and everything you've done for this family.
I know, I certainly would have.
I just imagine the Leo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just pointing and laughing at the screen.
Well, as Robert alluded to, this movie is about a man named Jerry Blake. So we are told, we don't know his real name. In fact, the subtitles refer to him exclusively as Stepfather. And he has a habit of trying to marry the perfect woman with the perfect children and create the perfect idyllic American life. And when it doesn't work, he fucking murders them and moves on.
As we see in a banger of an opening scene.
Oh my God, that has to be one of my favorite opening scenes to a movie.
It sets the tone for the whole movie right away because you don't know what you're watching at first, other than a man, like a grown man, changing clothes and taking a shower and cutting his hair and facial hair, and then he walks downstairs and it's just a bloodbath with a dead woman and a dead child on the ground.
And he takes a moment there's a chair that's knocked over and he puts it back up and sets the pillow in place. Just takes this one little moment to straighten it up while leaving just this bloody house full of carnage behind him.
And the very first note that I took here, because as we see him showering, John Locke has hair in this movie, Terry O'Quinn, and so very first thing I wrote down was Harry O'Quinn.
And about 3/4 of the way through, we find out that it is, in the movie, also a toupee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember why I wrote this, but down the street from the Myers house?
Well, yeah, because what was weird is when they were showing like the street, and there was like a little hedge right in the left-hand
yeah.
and so it looked like the street that the Michael Myers house was at, and then the house, I'm sorry, looked like the Nightmare on Elm Street house.
Yeah.
Not the first house, but the second house. It was crazy.
Well, I have been to the house that was used as the exterior for the Nightmare on Elm Street house. It's in Los Angeles. And in fact, if you're in LA and you pull up a map, like on Apple Maps or something, there's a little pin there that says Nightmare on Elm Street house.
This is why I can't go to LA.
Because you would want to move in?
Yep.
They probably would begrudge that. It does have a great big fence around it now.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, exactly. I can only imagine how many rabid fans have tried to get in there. But no, it's neither of those things because they're in Los Angeles and this movie was shot in Vancouver.
Yep. But it looked just like it was crazy.
Yep. I think that's just how they built houses in the 80s.
I wonder if it's maybe a deliberate choice to just, like, it's hard to actually tell that the second house he's in is not the same as the first, that he can just go from, like, cookie-cutter suburb to suburb. I feel like that might be kind of an intentional choice on the production designer's part, that it's just so easy for a man who presents himself, like you said, in this idyllic American male fashion to just plug into a different community and immediately, like, oh, Jerry, yeah, the good guy with the real estate.
Yep. And it's also a nice, entirely unintentional, I'm sure, commentary on 80s consumerism.
This movie I think is a lot smarter than I was expecting it to be, so I'm not sure it was unintentional. Like, I'm not saying it's, a genius level screenplay, but I'm like, this movie's a pretty clever thriller in its own little way.
Yeah, it's solid.
And we'll get there, but it's a lot smarter than the second one is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down, Cara finally got to see John Locke's butt.
Yeah.
I honestly expected you, like when we were watching, expected more excitement, but I guess you were just like taking it all in.
Well, that, and I had also eaten like a shit ton of spaghetti, so I was kind of in a carb coma.
That's fair. That's a good point. We were all in carb comas at that point.
Yeah.
I wrote down about probably 20, 25 minutes into this movie, this is the 80s. It made a lot more sense when I typed it out. 80s movie ever made.
Yeah, the synthesizer soundtrack everywhere.
It's definitely up there.
We get a poster of Reagan, I think, in the principal's office in one scene. And I was
because he would have been president at the time.
This took so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I enjoyed the 80s.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was only there for a little bit of them.
You don't remember them.
I don't remember anything about them.
I guess I snuck in for the last 2 years.
Hey, there you go.
Oh, God.
Robert, you took these two.
So, fun note on this is when one of the first hints we see of the cracks in Jerry's facade in his new life, because he's found a new wife and a new stepdaughter. He's a real estate agent, and we see him making a sale, and he's pushing the daughter of the family that he's selling the house to. He's pushing her on a swing and trying to bond with her, just talking about having a daughter of his own. And he gives her name as Jill, which, despite having said that her name was Stephanie earlier. And in the movie, it's a fun little bit because he's mixing up his previous lives. And in a way that gets progressively creepier, his reaction to this is not to, like, look nervous or to suddenly seem unsettled. He just takes this moment and almost visibly reboots himself. And then it's like, oh, yes, Jill, Stephanie, that is the name of my daughter. But Jill actually is the name of the actress who plays his daughter. So that was a cute little reveal there.
Neat.
And that ties into, I think, the next thing that you wrote there, David.
Yeah. Terry O'Quinn is scary as fuck in this movie.
Such a good performance. Like a really, really... Again, it's a good script. It really is. But I think this movie gets into not guilty pleasure, like genuine recommended just based on Terry O'Quinn's performance.
Absolutely.
It's a very subtle performance until it's not. And when it's not, like when he starts throwing tantrums, it's legitimately fucking scary.
Yes. Yes.
It's ham in all the right places. And I think the best thing is he plays the sincerity of what Jerry wants. That, you know, when he's at this backyard cookout and some of the other guys there are talking about the murders that Jerry committed, and he actually just seems really sad and upset that they're talking about it. And it's not, and you don't get the sense that that's an act he's putting on. It's like, this is genuinely an upsetting thing for him to think about. And when he kind of wistfully says, well, maybe they disappointed him when explaining why it happened, it's both a terrifyingly creepy thing to say, but also you're like, yeah, he wishes that hadn't happened, that he hadn't needed to do that.
I also wonder if the other guys at the table, his neighbors, heard him say maybe they disappointed him. Because if I heard somebody say that about a murder, I would have questions.
I mean, in this day and age, I don't know. We have so many, like, there's the true crime sort of sense of dark humor that we take everything in. I think if you heard someone say it with such a completely straight face, that would be creepy. But, I mean, in our friend group, I've heard people say much, much darker things about actual crimes.
That's a good point. And
or
I think
accidents.
I'm probably responsible for a lot of the fucked up things that you have heard.
I know I am at least responsible for one.
We do get another line. I don't remember the context for this. I think it's when Jerry's talking about still trying to bond with his stepdaughter,
Yes.
who's not really into him. And he tells his wife, I'm sort of a believer in lost causes. And that's when I kind of pointed at the screen and went,
He
reference
said
to a
that
thing
thing.
he'll do 17 years in the future.
Oh my God, it is 17 years, isn't it? He doesn't age is the thing between 87 and 2004.
He just gets
Really not.
better.
Just very well preserved guy. There is a weird thing. It happens twice in this movie. And honestly, one of them really kind of hurts it because I think the lead actress did a pretty solid job. Excuse me, listeners. I am still getting over a cough, and I feel fine, and then I start talking, and it just comes out in the middle of the sentence. I think the lead actress in this does a good job. She's not on O'Quinn's level, but, I mean, nobody in this film is. But she gets off on the wrong foot because she opens with just a terrible scene where she comes home from school, her mom's raking in the backyard, and we get like a delightfully whimsical scene where they're jumping around and throwing leaves on each other and giving off the most forced manic banter in a way that no human being ever has. And then later, when she's walking home with a boy who's kind of flirting with her, they do like this little playfully jumping around and boxing. And again, in both cases, it is an unplayably bad scene that does not reflect how humans act. And I felt bad for the actress who was good everywhere else, but I was just like, that does not put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I don't think that should ever happened, or at least it never happened where I was.
You guys didn't just bounce around in your yards on the sidewalks outside your house
No, let's see.
with loved ones?
No, I roller skated. I swam in the pool.
I lived in the middle of nowhere, so there was no gallivanting for me.
Yeah. But I lived in the desert, so it was hot. And
there's no gallivanting in the desert.
No, there's not.
Anyway, Robert, continue.
So, the daughter, Stephanie, has a therapist who, to his credit, actually does make an effort to try to investigate this guy that his patient is very clearly upset about. Unfortunately, he chooses to do so by meeting up with Jerry in a remote, isolated location, so it ends with him getting beaten to death with a 2x4. And when Jill shows up at his office, the new therapist's name is Faraday. Just another Lost reference waiting for us.
Yeah, that will become important in a season and a half.
Yep.
Which, I don't know about you guys. I'm very excited to get to season 3.
Yes.
Hopefully, I think next week. Anyway, Christ, throughout the movie, we see him at work. We see Jerry Blake, a.k.a. Stepfather, at work in his basement workshop, and he's building a birdhouse, a very intricate birdhouse, and we see him do the same thing in the second movie. This isn't just like your average birdhouse. It's enormous. He plants it on a pole in the yard, and I wrote down, Christ, he even makes family-sized birdhouses.
Yeah.
You just imagine like a bachelor bird like lands on there and he just shoots it with a rifle. Just like, this is not for you.
Absolutely.
And then, like a second later, his wife and baby show up, and then he has to play bird matchmaker, create his own version of Bird Stepfather.
Oh, no.
Guys, I think we just created a spin-off, Bird Stepfather.
Get moving on this, Hensley.
Stepbird.
But then we get towards the end to probably the best part of the entire movie and one of the scariest line deliveries I've heard in a film. But to give listeners some context for it, because, I mean, you can go out and watch this. It's on Tubi. It's on Amazon Prime. But if you've never seen it, to give some context to the scene, he has a routine. Like Robert was saying from the real-life example. In the movie, the stepfather quits his job, but then spends a few weeks pretending to go to work while he's scoping out a new place to live, new potential wives with stepkid or with kids for him to be a stepfather too, establishes a new identity, gets a new job. This is all an indicator that he's building up to murder his family and move on.
Which is kind of all the more terrifying that it's not a snap moment where he does it. He just makes a decision and then spends 3 weeks meticulously preparing for it.
Mm-hmm. This all leads to he comes home after like having established a new identity. His wife confronts him about how he hasn't been going to work, that she called his job and they said he quit. And when he's talking about his boss getting his name wrong, the name he gives is his new last name instead of the one that his wife thinks that he has. And she calls him out on this and he stops. And like Robert said earlier, it's like he reboots for a moment and he goes, wait, who am I here? And that is the moment where like the movie turns and you just go, I think all three of us and Katie who's watching with us went, what the fuck?
Yeah, because it's not like, again, not an overplayed line. He doesn't say it with panic or anything. It just really is the most casual, like, which one is it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about like the subplot of this movie, which is the brother of the last woman that he married. We only ever get his last name, Ogilvy.
I think it's James or Jim is mentioned one or two times.
They spent a lot more time just calling him Ogilvy, which I think was an attempt on the screenwriter's part to normalize the name Ogilvy, because I had never once heard it before this movie.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
is it more common than I thought?
I mean, I've heard it before, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I've encountered it in my life.
Oh, well, fuck
But
me,
I'm
I
old,
guess.
so there you go.
But he's been trying to track down the stepfather throughout the movie. Finally gets a lead, goes to find him. It does actually track him down after we get the "Who am I here" moment, which kicks off the attempted murder of his family.
The point where it kind of becomes a proper slasher movie, even though I'd argue it's not really that for most of its run.
Yep. He attacks his new wife, throws her in the basement. He attacks his stepdaughter. And this guy, Jim Ogilvy, is positioned like he's going to show up and save the day.
Well, that was my question as we were watching it. I was like, so is this guy going to be a Sam Loomis or is he going to be a Dick Halloran?
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, Dick Halloran is a character from The Shining who is built up like he's going to be the savior of Jack Torrance's wife and son. And instead, he shows up and immediately gets axed to the chest.
Like we follow a whole subplot of him making arrangements, traveling across country, getting up to this remote place, snowed in the winter, and he dies.
Uh-huh. And so does Ogilvy. He shows up. There is not much of a showdown. He gets stabbed to death.
But he fell afoul of the 19-foot, is it the 21-foot rule?
I think it's just the 20-foot rule.
20-foot rule, where the theory goes that if you're facing a person with a knife and you've got a gun, if they're within 20 feet of you, they can get to you and stab you before you can draw and aim the gun. Mm-hmm. It's actually, again, a good touch for the movie that we see him practicing with the gun, but when he actually has to pull it out in a moment of stress, it looks like his hand almost gets stuck in his pocket for a second, and that's enough time for Jerry to get close and stab him.
I'd never heard the 20-foot rule, so...
The only reason we remember it is it's a running thing on Justified where, they're setting up the feud between this knife guy and the quick draw main character. And I'm not going to spoil it if you ever get around to watching it, but the way they resolve it is one of the greatest scenes in the show's history.
It really is. And there was one night during COVID where your husband and I, David Two Dogs Hayes, former host of This Is a Work, were bored. And I think we were sitting outside smoking cigarettes, and I don't know why it came up, but I explained it to him, the 20-foot rule, and he's like, "That doesn't sound right." And I was like, well, fuck it. We literally have nothing else going on. Let's test it out. Obviously not with a real knife and real gun. It turns out that, unless you are like a quick draw expert, somebody can close 20 feet with a knife really fucking quick.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
Fun. I love that little tangent.
Right? Yeah. The more you know.
We also, in this sequence, I think it's while Jerry is stabbing Ogilvy to death downstairs, his daughter goes upstairs and takes a shower, which, because it's the 80s, gives us a nice lingering view of her topless and naked from the rear, which is kind of upsetting because it's been established in dialogue that the character is 16 years old. The actress was in her 20s, but it's still just like, this doesn't feel needed.
It was the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, gratuitous nudity was just par for the course with a slasher film, or not even a slasher, with any kind of 80s horror film.
And that's something I'd like to talk about at the end, is if this movie counts as a slasher or not. Because I think it's got moments like that, but really it's more of like a Hitchcock suspense thriller. And like, you know who Jerry is, and you kind of know what his deal is, and so the whole tension is just, when is he going to go off for the whole run?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yep. Let's see, what's next? This movie... I have thought ahead to check this before we watched it. We want to give a shout out on this podcast to the website doesthedogdie.com, because I checked it out before, and I went on Does the Dog Die, and it's like, yes, there is a dog in this movie. No, the dog does not die. Yes, it does appear like it's going to. And in one of the strangest, like almost like we want to endear you to this character kind of moments, after the stepfather throws his wife in the basement, he sees the dog that he got to try to endear himself to his stepdaughter, and he calls the dog over to him, and it comes, and he's petting it. The whole time he's holding a knife, and you're like, oh, Christ, no, he's going to stab this dog to death, and it's going to be gruesome and terrible. No, he just sits down on the floor and loves on it.
Yeah, just needs cuddles in that moment.
Mm-hmm. So
I love a dog.
Yeah, so I don't think he's a sociopath. I think he's just really committed to this traditional American family thing that he's got going.
Psychopath versus
violent obsessive.
Yeah, there we go. But in the end, the wife and daughter manage to get the better of him. He is definitively stabbed in the chest and tumbles down the stairs and comes to a stop and very obviously dies on screen, making sure that there can be no sequel to this. Motherfucker, there is a sequel to this, and we watched it.
And not just one.
Right, there is a third one, but it didn't have Terry O'Quinn, so we said fuck it.
Correct.
So, unless you guys have any like final thoughts on the Stepfather 1, should we move on to the Stepfather 2?
I would just say first one, shockingly good movie. Recommended for any kind of thriller, suspense horror fans out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know my love of 80s horror movies.
Oh yeah, both of us.
Yeah, it's just they're great, and this was actually honestly way better than I expected.
Oh yeah, I think we all expected it to be terrible but fun, and there were parts of it that weren't great, but overall it was much better than any of us were expecting, and had some actually genuinely scary and fucked up moments.
Yes.
So I appreciate that about it. Can't really say the same for part 2.
Yeah.
Make room for Daddy.
No.
Where he just gets out of prison and does the same thing.
Now wait. Because we have to somehow, we have to relive that moment where he died, but apparently didn't die. And he wakes up in a mental institution. Or
not
mental prison or something.
Yeah, psychiatric facility. Definitely not at the maximum security prison he should have been at.
God
just allowed
knows.
to roam around and like go into a wood shop, mess with sharp objects.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like it. No.
He gets assigned to the world's dumbest psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Psychologist. I don't know which one is which.
The black guy who just cannot die first in this movie fast enough.
Oh, God, it's true. I didn't even think about that. He tries to be like the cool therapist to the stepfather.
Does everything but turn his chair around and like sit over the back of it.
Uh-huh. Well, he does turn his chair around, which is a mistake because it gets him stabbed in the back of the neck after he's sent the one security guard present outside. So the stepfather is able to murder his therapist and a guard, steal his uniform, get away, move to California.
By the way, if I had a nickel for every show or movie I'd watched in the last week where a psychopath kills a doctor and a guard, steals the guard's uniform, and then walks out of a secure facility with surprising ease, well, I'd have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice because that's a whole plot on the most recent episode of Daredevil Born Again.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. When that happened, I was like, I feel like I just watched something along these lines. What was it?
At least the Daredevil guy had to put some work into getting his hands on a sharp object.
Yep, that's true. I want to talk to you about that episode once we get done here, but that's for another time. Did not take a lot of notes for this one because after we realized that this was just going to be what we thought the first one was going to be, a dumb but fun ride, I think we all just settled into watching it and making fun of it.
I think for me, it's the moment where he gets out of the facility and he's goes to, I think it's like a bus station or something, and sees a guy putting some stuff in the trunk of his car. And he's like, oh, that's a nice car. And the guy's like, yeah, thing I love the most, how roomy the trunk is. And right then, the stepfather slams the trunk door shut on the guy's hands. And you just get this comic beat of the guy turning and going, ah! And then it cuts to Jerry driving away. It's just this, okay, so Looney Tunes.
Yeah. It was so strange. It was so strange. I mean, I guess at least I've never seen that tactic in a movie before.
I mean, it worked. But one of the first things that I noted about the movie is as soon as it started off, I was like, oh, this was made for television.
It does have that very fuzzy production look.
Yeah, the production value is obviously a lot lower, and it was shot 30 frames a second, which is typically what they shoot TV shows and made-for-TV movies in. And it's a very noticeable frame rate difference that you just don't see mainstream movies shot in anymore. And all of the violence is almost entirely off screen. Like you see the stepfather attack people, but you never see like any knives or blunt instruments hitting anybody. It's always like cutaways. So I really thought this whole thing was made for TV until the end when they dropped 2 F-bombs.
And he gets the tooth end of a hammer buried in his chest pretty clearly on screen.
It's like they made the first 2/3 of it for TV, and then like we're told, oh, by the way, this is going to get a theatrical release. You can say fuck and show violence. It was very odd.
Yeah.
You might be right.
The filmmaker in me notices things like that because they drive me insane.
I'm trying to think back and be like, were there clear places where there could have been commercial breaks? And I feel like there were.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I mean, some streaming services don't even care about where they put the commercials. You could be like in the middle of a word and they'll just be like, meh.
Yeah.
Yep.
One note I had for a call forward for Lost, and it's a somewhat sadder one. At one point, the stepfather, the best friend of the woman that he's infiltrating the life of, does some research and figures out that he's not who he's pretending to be, and tries to just blackmail him to just leave and get out of their lives. And so he breaks into her house and kills her. And the way he does that is he strangles her with a towel or like a piece of cloth and then stages it to look like a suicide, which is something that will play a role in the character arc of John Locke before we get to the end of Lost.
Interesting.
Womp womp. I am constantly giddy to remember that you don't remember a lot of the back half of this show because it's going to be like you're experiencing it for the first time, and we get to do that with you.
Yes.
Very much looking forward to that.
Me too.
One line that I just wanted to note was in the same realm of, I want my kidney back.
Well, Robert, give the listeners a little bit of context for this next glorious line reading.
It's unclear if how secure Jerry is in his the stepfather is in his old-fashioned ways, but he does seem to be opposed to sex before marriage. But the woman he's romancing does not feel that way. So when he realizes that's necessary to sort of secure their relationship, he does it. And there's this kind of awkward bit where she's grinding on him, and he just seems like he's kind of staring up at the ceiling. But after her best friend appears to kill herself, and she's like, I don't know about getting married next week. Maybe that's not a good idea. The stepfather freaks out and ultimately builds with I've done everything. What else do I have to do? I had sex with you, for God's sake, which is a great thing to say to a fiance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right up there with, you want your $30 back? I want my kidney back.
There are a few moments where I see some John Locke-isms coming out, which again might just be Terry O'Quinn, but there's a point where he's driving in the first one and he kind of rests his arm on the steering wheel, puts his fingers on his temple, and I'm like, I'm sure he did that outside of Anthony Cooper's house at one point.
I believe so, yeah. That's really all the notes that we took about these. Robert, you've got two more here at the end. We sort of already talked about the first one.
Yeah, but just the interesting idea that, your normal slasher is something like Friday the 13th, where it's like, oh, you've got a cast of characters. They're getting killed by one. You might not know who's doing it, or you might not know what their deal is, but there's usually some element of, we're following the victims and we want to figure out what's happening. And the movie's upfront with what Jerry does, even if we get a little more detail about the mechanics of it later on. But so it's like a thriller wearing the coat of a suspense movie, and then it kind of becomes that at the very end. But, it's only got, Jerry only kills, after that opening scene where his family's already dead, I think the only person he kills is the psychiatrist, right?
And Ogilvy.
Oh, and Ogilvy, yeah. So he only actually kills two people over the course of the movie.
Mm-hmm. It's weird because it feels like this is a movie nestled between, the majority of this is a movie nestled between two slashers, because he very obviously, the murder of his previous family would be like the setup or a scene in a slasher movie. And this last scene where he kills Ogilvy and then goes after his wife and stepdaughter could be its own slasher movie. But a lot of this is just a suspense character drama.
Yeah, that none of the people around him, even the stepdaughter who just doesn't like him and has a bad feeling about him, but even when she suspects that he might be tied to this news story she's heard about a murder on the other side of the harbor, she doesn't really believe that until he's actually coming at her with a knife in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did any of you? I don't think either of you saw the remake, right? That came out in 2009. I think Dylan Walsh plays the stepfather.
No. It came out in that era of 70s and 80s horror remakes that most of them just shit the bed. Like the Hills Have Eyes, I Spit on Your Grave, all of those.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Which I didn't actually, I know this is going to be blasphemy to you, Cara. I didn't think the remake was terrible, but it definitely did not live up to you could never live up to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. No, it doesn't exist in my mind.
Last House on the Left, that's what I was trying to think of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this was the same period as those kind of remakes. So, no, I never had any inclination to see the remake.
I watched a clip and it kind of seems like they wrote and the actor plays the stepfather as just this actually distant asshole. And so the idea of his sort of endearing Ned Flanders-ish, approach, hiding the murder, that's just not in the new script. He just really is clearly a bad guy from the start.
Ew.
And it just seems, why would you choose to make your movie so much less interesting?
Right.
Well, I was going to say, for a lot of people, that's just what they live with.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go spend, I don't know what it was at the time, $10, $15, whatever, to go see a movie of the life I live at home. No, that's, not me, but,
Cara,
No.
do you need to tell us something?
I am a stepfather.
I know you're a
No,
stepmother.
I am. No, I'm in terms of
Did you murder your last family and luck your way into this one? Anyway, this is the last episode of Long Walk Talks Lost.
What are you reaching for? What's that in your pocket? Oh, God. And I'm going to knock my chair over, but I've already broken it most of the way.
Yeah, she just reached for the conveniently close box of construction screws. She got a whole construction crew to help murder me and Robert.
And they all came in a box.
Oh, there's a joke there. Anyway. That's The Stepfather, part 1 and part 2, and I just have to say it again, part 2, make room for daddy. Robert, you explained it to us, what the conceit is for part 3 and how they write out Terry O'Quinn not coming back.
Yeah, so essentially he escapes from an institution again, this time I guess with 2 scars of seemingly fatal wounds on his chest. But this time he goes to a plastic surgeon and forces the guy to change his face, and they just shoot him from behind until the new face and the new actor who's playing him for the rest of the movie is revealed. And as I understand it, the path of this one goes more or less the same. This time, the surrogate kid he's befriending is in a wheelchair. So, question mark. And it ends with the stepfather getting knocked into a wood chipper.
Nice.
That's about as fucking definitive as you can get, because the end of the first one, he very clearly died. The end of the second one, he very clearly dies. And when they're panning over the area where he was getting into a fight with his new soon-to-be wife, I really expected them to do the horror movie cliche thing where, like, it gets to where his body should be and where you last saw it and it's not there anymore. But no, he's laying there with a hammer sticking out of his chest and he dies on screen. So good on them for, like, how do we communicate to the audience that this is another fake out? Wood chipper.
A few things say finality than a wood chipper.
And you would know you murdered your last family.
I mean, you can't prove that.
That's a good point. That's the only thing keeping me alive right now. Okay, so that was our Lost adjacent movie. We've already started talking about what we're going to watch after season 3, and we're compiling a little list of things that we can watch after 4, 5, and 6 as well. We've got ideas, and it's going to be fun. But now we get to move on to season 3 of Lost, which we're all very excited for. So we've got 8 weeks of episodes for that. It's going to be very similar to this run of episodes. Season 3 also has 24 episodes. So we're going to watch those 3 at a time, and then we'll do our wrap up and Lost adjacent movie. And then we're going on hiatus for the summer. Because
Why is that?
Because I am directing William Shakespeare's Hamlet for Free Rein Theater Company, and Cara is going to be my stage manager.
Yay.
And Robert is going to hopefully be in it or involved with it in some capacity. So we'll all be very busy through the end of August.
I don't know. I mean, I could sleep a little less.
I couldn't possibly. I already get nowhere near enough sleep as it is, and I'm not going to be sleeping during Hamlet. If we've learned anything about when I direct shows, it's just that I don't sleep.
No, you don't. You get scary.
Yeah, I was thinking about that's a whole other story. But so we got that going on, which means that we'll be coming back in time for season 4 in September.
Yay.
Which will perfectly be the 1 year of when we started this. So I'm looking forward to that. How are we feeling about social media these days, guys?
I still love animal videos on TikTok.
Instead of social media, I am trying to read, and I'm enjoying a book called Box Office Poison about movies that flopped in really interesting ways.
Ooh.
Some of them are more like the famous ones, but there was a movie called Supernova that came out in the 2000s that I'd never heard of, but now I desperately want to watch because it looks atrocious.
Oh, wow. Okay, I might need to listen or read that one.
I'm here for it. Sorry, I wanted to throw in there, we started doing the relevant dates, like the most recent of thing. Just for the nostalgic ones among us, almost 20 years ago, on March 30th, 2005, we had season 1, episode 20, Do No Harm. And then I was not updating dates when I did this. I updated the episode titles and numbers, but not the dates in which they premiered. So we're recording this on Thursday, April 10th. So around this day, 20 years ago, was episode 120, Do No Harm. And then 19 years ago, episode 219, SOS. 18 years ago, in 2007, episode 316, One of Us. 17 years ago, is that right? 20? Yeah, 17 years ago, episode 49, The Shape of Things to Come. 16 years ago, 512, Dead is Dead. And then 15 years ago, episode 611, Happily Ever After. Wow. How does that make you feel? It's been 15 years just about since this show ended. That's just going to get worse the longer this goes on. Anyway, I am still on social media if you'd like to follow me and see the unhinged things that I post and share. And if you want me to share unhinged things with you, the way I often do with Cara, you can follow me on Instagram at dbhensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us. To see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on.
I guess they disappointed Cara.